Hello, everybody, and welcome back to You Exchange, the podcast where I exchange my user experiences to change them, and yours for the better. I'm Jeremy, a mentor and senior user researcher with over 8 years of experience and a background in neuroscience. Throughout my career, I've had the privilege of engaging with hundreds of users around the world. I've created this podcast with the aim of providing my mentorship and educational content, offering actionable tips, knowledge, and guidance in the realm of research to anyone having an interest in this area. And I hope that you will find this episode insightful. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Very happy to be back, especially for this series of episodes in which I will cover storytelling. So, storytelling is a very dear topic of mine for several reasons, and I will get into them very quickly. Probably I can shed some light on why I started these episodes and also give you a bit of my feedback from my experience, my progress on the topic, and where I am at so far. But without starting, I wanted to be clear on what you can expect from these series of episodes. These episodes are for everyone and anyone having to make some presentations. It's true for those who don't know me that I come from a background of research, and so my presentations are research oriented, basically. For those who don't know me, I'm a UX researcher with 10 years of experience, and my day-to-day job is to report to businesses what are users expecting of their products, basically. And so over the years, I had to develop some strategies to make my insights every time more and more impactful. However, this is more research-oriented, so not everything that I'm about to say will be applicable to your situation. For instance, if you're a consultant, let's say in business, or if you are working as an engineer, there are many cases. Not everything might be applicable to you. However, I think that the core of the message will be applicable to you, and I think you might still learn at least one thing. That's one of the topics in which I think we should all be learning every day, at least to some extent. And I am guilty myself of having learned some of these skills late, let's say. And I'm still not considering myself to be an expert. I think I am 10% of the way to learn about storytelling, maybe even less. So don't take everything that I'm saying as face value. I will just be reporting my experience. I'm not an expert. Once again, I'm reporting my experience, my point of view, and I'm happy to disagree if you think that there are better ways to present. So, that being said, what can you expect from these episodes? So, first of all, I will share some, let's say, tips, tricks. This is not in the exact order, by the way, which is kind of ironic for a presentation on storytelling. But anyway, I will share some tips and tricks. I will share about my story when it comes to storytelling. What have I learned along the way? Some mistakes that I did so that you will not reproduce them. Also, about some theory when it comes to storytelling, some guidance, some mention of templates, how you can use, let's say, theories and templates and guides to, guide you throughout your presentations, things that you should avoid, and also how you can optimize the content both orally and visually when it comes to your presentation. So I will cover a bit of the slides. I will cover the content that you should prepare, how you should prepare for your presentation, because this is something that we prepare along the way, and all the steps you have to go through. So before the presentation, when you craft a presentation, during the presentation, and after the presentation. So there are many, many ways to cover the topic. I'm so excited by this because I really love this topic and it's something I'm constantly learning about. So that's it for the introduction, and now I will dive right in. So, first of all, what can you expect from storytelling? Why storytelling? Why is it so important? So, as you might already know, we are social creatures and we are creatures of stories. Whatever we share between us is way more impactful as a story. I think this is why when we are children, we are begging for stories. And I think this is why, whatever our age, we remember way more easily something if it was shared as a story. But why a story, would you say? I don't have a real explanation behind that. I can probably share what I know of related areas and offer my perspective because I haven't, to be really honest with you, I haven't read about the why stories are so impactful, but I can give you my 2 cents. Stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So on this we can agree. A story starts, culminates to some point, and then ends. And so as such, we need to organize things in a coherent and logical manner. That is the first advantage, I would say, of stories. It is a framework that helps us to share things in a way that makes sense to our brain. First, something happened, and then something else happened, and now this is the current state. Probably in the future, we will have this XYZ state. So that's the first thing. Then, a story is unique. Whoever is telling the story tells it in a way that it's unique from their point of view, except if they report it. But it's unique in a way because it has to be told. Even if you repeat it, you will have several emotions, you will have a facial expression, you will have a tone of voice, you will have a way to communicate, you will have an intonation. All of that is unique to the person telling the story. And so this, you will communicate it to your audience. And you will see why emotion, intonation, and let's say the evolution of your state while you tell the story is so important as well. So that's the second aspect. Also, stories in a way create empathy. So when you share a story about a character, it will create empathy for this character. We can all remember of our favorite cartoon in which we felt some pain or sadness for the main character. So it increases empathy. It also helps to turn complex things into simple things. Because when you tell a story, there is a setting stage. You set the stage and you tell everyone, this is how things currently are. And this is the problem. And so this is how the main character will try to solve it. We will cover later some frameworks for storytelling. And so basically, it helps you and everyone listening to be on common ground. So that's another reason why storytelling is so impactful and so powerful. Then, of course, it comes with its challenges. Because when you tell a story, you tell it from your point of view. Or at least you have some implication. And this implication is called personal bias. So when we tell stories, if we repeat it from facts, findings, we have made a selection. We have made a selection of what is important to us. That, to begin with, is a bias. The way we communicate is also a bias, or can be influenced, by our biases. And also, the way we tell it, it might not be all relevant to what was asked for. I'm thinking more specifically of business contexts. So these are some challenges that I have right at the top of my mind about telling stories that come associated with the importance of telling stories. So now I'm going to tell you some of my stories which are related to my experience in understanding the importance of storytelling. So, first of all, I want to tell you that everyone has some kind of flow in their activity from day to day, let's say. So the flow is characterized by it's a state characterized by the fact that we are motivated to do something. We are performing this thing. We are in the moment. The difficulty of what we are doing and performing the activity we are doing is just enough that is challenging and not too much so that it's not burning us out. So this is a state called flow. It's described in the literature. It's not the exact definition. This is mine and my understanding of it. But it's called flow. And in a state of flow, at least for myself, when I'm in this state, I completely forget time and other activities I might have to do and other things I might have to consider. And storytelling, at least the fact of preparing presentations and thinking about how I should craft my message, is exactly the activity that puts me in a state of flow. And this is the activity that up to now I found the most challenging in my whole career. It's about crafting a compelling story so that it resonates with your audience. Why is it so challenging? It doesn't have to be. That was my understanding. I always felt, telling a good story is for cinema professionals, actors, and the like. It doesn't have to be. It can be very simple. So let me tell you an example and a framework that I use. Again, I'm not a professional, so maybe it won't resonate with you, and I'm sorry in advance, but maybe it does. So once upon a time, there was a guy. This guy was called Jeremy, and this Jeremy had to make a lot of presentations. Jeremy hustled and tried to put things together and communicate them in a way that would be understandable. However, when came the moment to present, nothing was understood or understandable the way it was supposed to be. And this went on and on with some improvement, but still, the message couldn't come across as clear. Until one day, Jeremy realized that telling stories, as everything else, is a skill, and that it is something that we can learn. And so he went on this journey to learn about the effective techniques of telling stories and making good presentations. Then he improved dramatically, and that helped making his insights actionable. And so from this day, he decided he will communicate these insights. So that's an example of a short story. It's not the best, and maybe it didn't resonate a lot with you, but at least that's a framework. And that's called the Pixar framework. So once upon a time, XYZ, character does something. Every day, character was doing something until one day something happens, and that's the climax of the story here. Then, because this thing happened basically, then consequence. And now, consequence. So you can tweak it for your own needs, but when I discovered the power of this framework adapted to any situation, it was like a blessing for me because it seems trivial, but it's not. It can impact our daily life. It can impact everything we do. Everything. If you want to communicate an idea, if you do it through a story, it will be way more understandable, let's say. It will resonate better. Your audience will be more empathetic towards you because you are speaking a language that is universal. Provided you speak the same language, you speak a common language mechanics, let's say. And so that's why I discovered it was so powerful. Now let me tell you another story. When I was in my first job, I had the same kind of challenge, which was synthesizing user insights to come up with presentations and sharing it with audience and sometimes directors, executives, and so on. And so I will always remember this project that I did, which was a literature review for like 1 month on a topic, very corporate position. So this is normal deadline, 1 month for literature review. And I remember I went down the rabbit hole of these processes and these insights. And I will always remember when I crafted my presentation, my manager told me, and my manager was totally right about this, in hindsight, to be honest, told me, it's not ready. You have to go back and do it again. It's not ready. And so I was shocked because from my perspective, it was. I had prepared this for a month, but it was not ready. And in reality, I had not prepared this for a month. I did it for 3 weeks, and then I prepared the presentation in 3 days. So it's absolutely not what is expected. When you have to make a presentation, you have to put in the work and the time to craft the message, the format, almost as much as the content, and almost as much as the time it took you to prepare and to gather insights about this. To make a great story, I mean, if you want to make a great point, and if you're sharing something that is, let's say, debatable or not necessarily accepted, that will be difficult to implement, something a bit political, and so on and so forth, probably crafting your message correctly, thinking about your words, putting your words one after the other in the right way, and making use of slides and working on your speech is essential, because you can have the most amazing insights and things to share. If you don't share them well, it will not be understood. And so it seems really obvious, but I took time to realize this, to be honest. I thought it would be natural. If I prepared something, I will share it, it will be understood. It's not. It's not. You have to put some effort into crafting the good message. And sometimes some people are more gifted than others, or have natural, let's say, ease to do that, or maybe are more trained. So you might see your peers or some other friends or people you know not necessarily struggling with that, but it's okay. We are all learning, and in my case, it was about storytelling. Okay, enough about telling you about my experience. Now I want to dive right in and give you some tips on how you can improve your storytelling and your presentation skills. Okay, let's start from the beginning. when does preparing your presentation start? Actually, I never ever thought about this until recently. Preparing your presentation starts the moment you start your project. I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. If you start your project with some requirements, constraints, expectations from your stakeholders, people expecting your presentation. If you start with that in mind, if you start imagine you're a researcher and you want to run a project and you already have in mind the methodology, you already have in mind the way you will analyze the results, and you have in mind the way you will conduct the research. You have in mind 80% of your story. Your story is just not written down, but it's already happening. It's already happening. So, if you want to not struggle at the time of crafting your message in front of a PowerPoint presentation, think about it twice when you're preparing your project. So, for instance, one trick that I have, provided I have the time, is I prepare my slides in advance. I know it sounds crazy, but prepare your final presentation in advance. It will ease so much work for you. Because if you prepare your slides, first of all, imagine you have a proposal to make regarding an approach for a project. If you prepare this in the form of slides, they are already done at the time of you presenting your results. You just have to reuse them. They are done. And on top of that, you use these slides to align with the people you have to align with. So that's a discovery I made. Like, I know it sounds obvious. Today is the day of me being obvious, but I realized this very late. So if you can, when you think about preparing, think that you will have to present what you prepared. And you will have to tell people why you did the things you did. And so if you have this already prepared, it's even better. So that's the first thing. Now imagine you didn't do this, which is 99% of people, myself included. So if you have not done this, I will encourage you to go back to some episodes that I did on storytelling and how to prepare for presentations. Always start with your content in mind. Don't look at slides. Don't open any PowerPoint presentation. Just take a Google Docs or any other form of you writing down your content and write it down. Write everything. Just write. It will get out of your head. That's the first thing. And the idea is then that you have to reorganize your content. Use sticky notes, storyboard, whatever you want to do, but sketch. Draw if you have to draw. You have to organize your ideas. So it can be drawing things about what you want to say, or writing things about what you want to say, and writing things about how you want to say it. What I used to do is like a table or 2 columns of stickies. In one column, I put, what do I want to say here? And then in another, I put, how do I want to say it? Do I want to use a diagram? Do you want to use a pyramid? Do I want to use a cycle? Do I want to show a relationship between 2 processes? So you can do it this way. It will increase your clarity about how you will present things. Then determine your goals for your presentation. Try to think about what were the goals of this project. But not only, what do you want to do with this presentation? Do you want to convince people? Do you want just people to know about your message? Do you want to have feedback on something, on a decision? Do you want help to make some decision? Do you want just to communicate the status of a project and so on and so forth? By this, I mean that you have to verify, of course, if storytelling is appropriate for your specific situation and if presentation even are appropriate. Again, might sound obvious, but to me was not. Not everything is meant to be a presentation. And not every report or deliverable needs to be a story. So that's the first thing. Then you need to make it kind of resonate. So it needs to resonate for people if you want to convince them. The more data, the better. As always. The more angles to a problem, the better. And the more it is aligned with what people want, the better. So if someone told you to make a research project, and this project had some objectives, think about when you present how it is aligned with the objectives. Because if you go too far from the original objectives, you won't be heard that much. Now, in terms of how should you divide a presentation? That's a question I get asked often. So that's a big learning from my side. And recently someone told me, so this is not from me, but I agree to the idea. Someone told me, last slide first. And I got it straight away because I learned from my mistakes over the years. And I tried, like, without knowing that when I present something, I need people to come to the conclusion as well as I have come to the conclusion. Meaning, I have to show everyone the facts, the learnings, the insights, the way I analyzed data, the way I synthesized and so on. I need to show it so that at the end only people can understand the process. This never works. People don't want to. If you tell me that we have a 1 hour presentation and I will learn only in the last 5 minutes about all the insights and the recommendations, I will come only to the last 5 minutes. Like, to be honest, people don't have time. So you need to communicate things in a way that is highly digestible for them. However, be prepared for if someone asks you, about more info. Anyway, my point being that I discovered late that the higher in the hierarchy you need to show content and present something, the more condensed it needs to be and the more overview it needs to be. So there is this kind of rule of thumb that I try to follow, which would be like having the results first in the form of an executive summary. That would be high-level findings, some recommendations, and conclusions. And then we dive deeper so that if some executives want to go, they at least got the message. So that is, in my opinion, where the most important part of a presentation takes place, or is, which is, hi everyone, thanks for joining. Here is the agenda. You announce everything you will present in a list. You give some sneak peek of the content, and you tell people how long will it be per section so that they can be prepared. You let them know as well when to ask for questions. You will still have people who will not listen to you, and that's okay. But you can say something like, for the sake of the presentation and the time we have, it's best if questions are asked at the end. It can be this. This is best if you have a big chunk of content to present so that you don't want to be interrupted. But if you have several sections to present in which in between you have some, let's say, interruption, then you can let people ask questions in between. And that's important to prepare for this because it can highly disrupt the flow of a presentation. I cannot tell you how many times I presented with a deck of, let's say, 25 slides, and I'm stuck at the third slide by someone asking questions over and over again, which is okay, because if there are questions, it means that this presentation at this very moment is blocking them. And so we need to resolve this. So then depending on the dynamics, someone maybe can ask, okay, we will review that offline, but it can happen. So by planning ahead, you're more prepared. That's my point. You will never know for sure, but you can be more prepared. So the agenda, telling people when they can ask questions, and then the big chunk of the presentation, which is the 10% of slides really, high-level findings, recommendations, and conclusions. You should also think about, of course, and this is one of the most important topics, your audience. Your audience is like, if you're a user researcher, you know that we create and improve products for an end user, and the goal is for us to have this product to meet their needs. Because I can make an awesome product. If this product is answering no need, it will not be used. This is the same for presentation. A presentation is your product, and your stakeholders are the users. They have a need, they want something from this presentation, and your goal is to provide it to them. So it's like the audience is a huge variable in this equation, let's say. So think about them first before even crafting your presentation. You will never make a presentation the same if you do it to developers or to designers or to executives. For the latter, you will maybe focus more on the business aspect and how does it impact the business. For designers, you might just share some research findings and tell them how does that impact the design, for instance. For developers, you can probably focus on some constraints and technical aspects. This is not exhaustive, but the idea, you get it. It's to adapt to your audience. Think about what should matter to them, what is important to them, basically. And also think about the change you want to make in their mind. So, do you want to change a belief? Do you want to change an emotion? Or do you want to change a behavior? For instance, if I'm a business and I think that users should be able to only buy a product if they are logged in, if I'm very rational about this and I say this is because all competitors do it, but if the person doing the research showed me that because of that process, we are losing whatever ballpark figure, we are losing 40% customers month, this is a fact. And this will impact my belief that having people to register is a good thing for the business. It's not. As you're seeing, we are losing 40% customers month because we are forcing them to register, and forcing someone to register when they purchase something is not good for business. That's it. If you want to change an emotion, imagine I'm saying, oh, our flow is very intuitive for our users. They love it. But if my researcher shows me a video of my participant being frustrated because they cannot find how to change an item in the cart, well, if I'm showing the emotion the user is in, that it's frustration, that it's not relief, well, my stakeholder would change their emotion. And if you want to change behavior, of course, you have to recommend things. You have to say, we recommend allowing users to change their items in the cart easily so that they don't drop out the purchase. And so you should change beliefs with facts, change emotions with emotional messages, and change behaviors with recommendations. One small aspect, because I'm being asked about this all the time: does my research presentation need to follow the order of the research questions that I set at the time of preparing the research, for instance? Or any other stuff. If you're a project manager in a company, probably it's not about research questions, probably it's about milestones and deliverables. And probably at the end you need to present your final project results. And you might think, should I present the milestones in the order I set them? Probably yes, but it can also be that it would make sense to present them another way. Maybe the most impactful first, and the other ones can be bonus, let's say, for instance. Or it can be, now where are we and where we started. So from now to going back to the past. There are multiple and several ways to present something. It doesn't need to follow exactly how things were decided and how things were prepared at the moment they were prepared. And this I also struggled for some time, and I think this is due to our tendency to try to respect too much the things we set, let's say. We want to be too scholar. We sometimes want to be too rigid because we feel that if we don't do things in a certain order, it will be bad. It doesn't need to be. You're telling a story, it's your story. You need to craft it from the angle you prefer. Think about it this way. If you feel that something is more impactful presented in another way, it probably is. It probably is. Because if you just thought about this, it means that to you, at least, it's more impactful this way. So think about this. Now I'm going to tell you about some storytelling techniques. And then we will move on with a brief introduction of story arcs. And in next episodes, I will cover other storytelling techniques, story arcs more in detail, and so on. So, some storytelling techniques. So, these are kind of artifacts and elements you can use to resonate better with your audience. So, for instance, one thing that worked really a lot with me is the idea of a storyboard. So, storyboard is not only something we use in user experience, of course, it's not only something we use in user research, it's used in a variety of fields. It can be marketing, or in advertisement, or even in the cinema industry, of course. And so, why do we use storyboards? The storyboard is used to map an experience from start to finish about something, about a process, about a user experience, about something that has a beginning, middle, and end. You can use that as an artifact to improve your storytelling, and even for yourself to map the experience and to kind of have a flow in mind before moving forward. You can also map out visually the user interactions, the key moments, and you can use that, let's say, as a point of reference. I will come back to that later, and I will refer to that as breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs is really, really effective to improving the flow of your presentation. So, for instance, a really, let's say, resonating way I used to improve my storytelling was to use a user journey map as a frame to present insights. And so I would first have a slide with my user journey map, and then I will focus into each part, and there will be the sections of my presentation. It will be, okay, section 1, section 2, section 3, and now we go step by step, basically. And this is something that helps a lot the users, and in this case, the audience, to understand the flow of the presentation. You can use, of course, as I said in previous episodes, other material that will engage people better. As I said, videos will engage you more than audio, which will engage you more than text. And so you can use that. Some video and audio clips, it can be from your users speaking, it can be anything. It's more engaging. You can also use a narrative arc. As I said at the beginning when I gave this example about Pixar, Pixar uses this kind of storytelling in any cartoon, and that is amazing because there is this kind of Pixar touch or Pixar way of telling stories that we can all resonate with. There are other storytelling arcs, like the South Park one, which is about creating tension between two things. And there is the hero journey, of course. This is the most common one. You can also make use of of comparisons. Making use of comparisons is always a good idea. And the most basic one is what it is right now, what is the current state versus what could it be in the future, what is the to be state. And so that is something that your stakeholders can resonate with because it's a highly, let's say, intuitive way of seeing things, of seeing progression, and it's easy to put in place. What we have right now, what could it be in the future? And you can put them side by side and you will improve the understanding of the audience. So that's it for the storytelling techniques. We also have the story arcs, and as I said, I will cover them more deeply in the next episode. But basically, you have several types of arcs. I already shared them. Think about the way, how is your data? Think about what is your content, how you want to present it, and then try to map it in regards to the steps of your journey. And so what I would recommend, at least if you're a user researcher or designer or product manager, is to show the answer first type of arc. We have another storytelling arc that I said briefly at the beginning. It's called answer first. So you answer the questions first and then you show evidence. I would recommend that. And I wanted to end this episode on a really simple note. Don't overthink it. It's as simple as that. Think about your content, what you want to say. And in a nutshell, I can tell you already, not everything has to be shared. There is one tip I haven't told you about, which is if you fear that you will lose information when you tell a story, well, make your whole presentation once with everything you want to share. And then from that presentation, make another one, a reduced one. And then from that presentation, you can make even another one. If you're like me, who wants to present everything, you might need this technique, which is you might not be able, like me, to show your final presentation, which would be like a synthesis of all your insights in a few slides only, because you would fear losing information. And so one way to do it is to craft a presentation of everything. And this is for you or for whomever wants it. but it's easier for you to strip the content down afterwards and to synthesize from that. So go gradually synthesizing and making it leaner. That would be my tip for the end. And my very last tip, as I said, don't overthink it about storytelling and about arcs and progression and telling a story. It's as simple as having a beginning, a middle, and an end. These are three elements. And in general, it's as simple as beginning, we set the stage, middle, there is a conflict or a climax, something happening. It can be the most important part of the story. And the end is like, what now? What now? What have we learned and what now? It's as simple as that. Then, of course, we can make it more complex, but hopefully that will help you, let's say, decrease this potential anxiety you have at the time of making presentations. So that's it for today's episode. I was really happy to make it. I hope you learned at least one thing. If this is the case, like always, please subscribe. Feel free to comment, share it with your friends, colleagues, and I will look forward to having you in the next episode. But until then, take care. Bye-bye. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you everyone for joining me today on New Exchange. I hope you found today's episode insightful and valuable. Make sure to subscribe in order for you not to miss the next episode. Share it if you liked it and leave a review. Thank you for your time and attention. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future topics, feel free to reach out directly to me. You can find all the details in the show notes. And see you in the next episode. Bye-bye. And